What would you do if a homeless man approached you and asked for just $1? Most people might ignore him, some might spare some change, and a few might offer words of encouragement before walking away. But when Donald Trump was put in this exact situation, his response was something that no one saw coming. It started as a simple encounter, just a man on the streets struggling to survive, hoping that someone, anyone, would acknowledge him. He had no idea that the person he had chosen to ask for help was one of the most powerful and unpredictable men in the world. What happened next left bystanders in shock, made headlines, and turned a simple request into a moment that would be remembered forever. This wasn't just about money. It was about a lesson in leadership, character, and the power of a single decision. Stay with us, because this is a story you don't want to miss. If you believe in leadership, power, and second chances, this is the place for you. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to never miss an inspiring Trump story. He had once been someone, a man with dreams, with ambitions, with a life that hadn't always been defined by the streets. But somewhere along the way, life had taken a different turn, and now he was here. Another forgotten face among the thousands who drifted through the city, invisible to those who walked past him every day. His name had long since stopped mattering to most. He had no title, no place to call home, no one waiting for him at the end of the day. He existed in the shadows of society, where people averted their gaze, where they hurried past as if pretending not to see him would make him disappear. He had learned the patterns of the streets, the times of day when people were most likely to offer something, the expressions that meant they would stop versus those that signaled they would keep moving. He had perfected the quiet, humbled tone, just enough desperation to let people know he was struggling, but not so much that they felt uncomfortable. "Can you spare $1?" The words had become a script, one he repeated over and over, 100 times a day, to 100 different faces. Some ignored him completely, their eyes flickering past as if he didn't exist. Others made excuses, "Sorry, I don't have cash," before walking off without a second glance. A few, every now and then, would drop a coin or a bill into his outstretched hand, but they never really saw him. They were giving out of guilt, out of obligation, out of the need to clear their conscience before they moved on with their lives. He had accepted this reality. It wasn't personal. This was just how the world worked. And then, on a day that seemed like any other, he saw a man walking toward him. Well-dressed, confident, the kind of presence that commanded attention without saying a word. He didn't recognize him. Why would he? He had spent so long outside of the world where people like this thrived that their faces no longer mattered. He didn't watch the news, didn't follow politics, didn't concern himself with anything beyond surviving the next day. To him, this was just another passerby, another face in the crowd, another chance at maybe getting enough money for a meal. So he did what he always did. He extended his hand, his voice steady but weary. "Can you give me $1?" He didn't know it yet, but in that moment, with that one simple request, he had unknowingly approached one of the most powerful and unpredictable men in the world. And what happened next would change everything. Donald Trump was a man who had spent his life making decisions, in boardrooms, on construction sites, in high-stakes negotiations. Every moment demanded sharp instincts, the ability to assess a situation in mere seconds, to understand the value of what was in front of him. He had learned long ago that success was not just about intelligence, but about seeing opportunities where others saw nothing. And so, when he heard the words, simple, direct, spoken with the weary voice of a man who had asked 1,000 people the same question before, Trump didn't do what most would have done. He didn't look away, didn't pretend not to hear, didn't offer a dismissive nod before continuing on. He stopped. For a brief moment, there was silence between them. The homeless man, accustomed to rejection, waited for the familiar reaction, the polite excuse, the forced smile, the hurried retreat of someone eager to escape, the discomfort of acknowledging him. But none of that came. Trump's expression didn't show pity. He wasn't a man who believed in feeling sorry for people. Pity was useless. Pity changed nothing. Instead, what filled his eyes was something far more dangerous: curiosity. He studied the man in front of him, his gaze sharp, evaluating not just the clothes, the dirt on his hands, the exhaustion in his posture, but something deeper. Who was he? How had he ended up here? Was he just another man beaten down by life? Or was there something more? The homeless man had no idea who he had just asked for money. He had no idea that he was standing before a billionaire, a man who had built his name and his empire on defying expectations, making bold moves and rewriting the rules as he saw fit. He had no idea that Trump was a man who had spent his entire life testing people, pushing them, challenging them to prove their worth. And now, in this seemingly ordinary moment, Trump was making a decision. A simple request for $1 had just turned into something far greater. This wasn't just about money. It was about opportunity. It was about character. It was about whether this man, who had spent so long being ignored, still had the fire inside him to stand back up. Trump wasn't going to just hand him $1 and walk away. That would have been too easy, too predictable. And if there was one thing Trump never was, it was predictable. Instead, he was about to do something that no one watching, not the homeless man, not the bystanders, not even Trump himself, could have foreseen. A decision had been made, and what came next would leave everyone speechless. Donald Trump had always believed that money was just a tool. It wasn't what defined success. It was what a person did with it that mattered. He had seen men inherit fortunes and lose everything. He had seen others start with nothing and build empires. It had never been about the money itself. It had always been about the mindset behind it. So when the homeless man stretched out his hand and asked for a single dollar, Trump didn't reach for his wallet. He didn't do what was expected. Instead, he paused. He studied the man, not just the torn clothes or the rough hands, but the eyes. Because the eyes told the real story. They revealed whether a man had given up or if there was still a spark left inside him. And then, instead of handing over the money, Trump asked a question. What are you going to do with it? The homeless man blinked, confused. No one had ever asked him that before. People either gave him money or ignored him. No one had ever stopped to question what came next. I just need $1, the man said, hesitant. Trump didn't move. His expression remained unreadable, his gaze unwavering. $1 isn't going to change your life, Trump said, but how you think about money, that will. The homeless man shifted uncomfortably. He had asked for money thousands of times before, but never had anyone challenged him on it. Never had anyone made him think about what came after that single bill left their hand. Trump continued, his voice calm but firm. You can take $1 and buy yourself a little food, maybe something to drink, and by tomorrow you'll need another one. The next day, another. That's how people stay stuck. They only think about getting through today. But what if, instead of thinking about today, you thought about how to change your future? The words hit harder than the homeless man expected. He had spent years in survival mode, focusing on just making it through another day. No one had ever spoken to him about a way out. Trump wasn't offering charity. He wasn't offering sympathy. He was offering a challenge. What do you really want? Trump asked. Is it just $1, or is it a chance to get back on your feet? The homeless man's mind raced. He had never had a conversation like this before. He had never expected that one request for a single dollar would turn into a moment that forced him to question everything. People around them had begun to slow down, watching. They had assumed Trump would either ignore the man or hand him money and walk away. But this was different. This was something they had never seen before. And the homeless man, who had spent years being overlooked, suddenly found himself at the center of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. In that moment, he realized this wasn't about $1 anymore. It was about a decision. And his next words could change everything. Donald Trump had never been the kind of man to do what was expected. While others reacted with emotion, he responded with strategy. While most saw a problem, he saw an opportunity. And as he stood there looking at the homeless man who had just asked him for a single dollar, he didn't see hopelessness. He saw potential. Most people would have handed over some loose change and walked away, forgetting the encounter before they even reached the next block. But Trump wasn't interested in temporary solutions. He wasn't the type to throw money at a problem and feel satisfied that he had helped. No, Trump had built his entire empire on investing in the right people. And in this moment, he wanted to know, was this man worth the investment? Instead of reaching into his pocket, he spoke. "If I give you more than $1, what will you do with it?" The homeless man hesitated. He had spent so long focused on surviving day by day that he had never considered that question before. "I just need something to eat," he muttered, his voice uncertain. Trump raised an eyebrow. "You just need something to eat. And then what? Tomorrow, you'll need another $1. Next week, another. A month from now, you'll still be here asking for the same thing. That's not a solution, that's a cycle." The man looked down, not used to being challenged like this. People gave him money out of guilt, out of pity, out of the desire to feel like they had done their good deed for the day. But this was different. Trump wasn't giving him pity, he was giving him a choice. "You're asking for $1, Trump continued. "I'm offering you something bigger. But first, I need to know, what are you willing to do to change your life?" The air between them grew heavier. People walking by paused to listen, realizing that something unusual was happening. This wasn't just another rich man ignoring a beggar. This was a negotiation. Trump saw the hesitation in the man's face and pressed forward. "You're standing here, waiting for people to hand you money," Trump said. "That's easy. But life isn't about easy. Life is about taking chances. So I'm going to ask you again. If I give you more than $1, what will you do with it?" The homeless man swallowed. He had expected a simple yes or no. He had expected a stranger to either ignore him or toss him some change and keep moving. But this wasn't a stranger. This was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump didn't believe in doing things the way everyone else did. For the first time in years, the man felt something unfamiliar rising inside him, the need to think bigger. He realized in that moment that this wasn't about $1. It was about a test. And what he said next would determine everything. Donald Trump's journey is filled with resilience, bold decisions, and unforgettable moments. Stay inspired. Like this video, drop a comment below, and subscribe to be part of this movement. Donald Trump had spent his entire life thinking differently. Where others saw problems, he saw opportunities. Where others hesitated, he took action. He had built empires, navigated crises, and turned obstacles into stepping stones. And now, standing before a homeless man who had asked him for a single $1, he saw something that others had missed, potential waiting to be awakened. The easy thing to do would have been to reach into his pocket, hand over some cash, and walk away. That was what most people did. But Trump had never been interested in doing what was easy. He was interested in what was right. And to him, the right thing wasn't just handing over money, it was handing over knowledge. "Listen to me," Trump said, his voice steady, commanding. "Success isn't about how much money you have in your pocket. Money comes and goes. What matters is how you think, how you act, and what you do with what you have." The homeless man had expected a transaction. What he was getting was a lesson. Trump continued, "I've seen men with millions go bankrupt because they didn't know how to handle what they had. And I've seen men with nothing turn themselves into giants because they refused to think small. It's not about where you are today. It's about where you're willing to go." The words hit differently. The homeless man had spent years hearing the same tired phrases from people who barely stopped to acknowledge him. But this was something else. This was direct, raw, and undeniably true. "You asked me for $1, Trump said. "And if that's all you want, I can give it to you. But what happens after that? Tomorrow, you'll need another $1 and another. You're stuck in a cycle, and you don't even realize it." The homeless man stiffened. He had never thought about it like that. To him, each day was just about survival, about getting enough to eat and making it through the night. He had never considered the pattern he was trapped in. Trump leaned in slightly, his voice lowering, becoming more intense. "If you want to change your life, you have to stop thinking like a man who needs $1 and start thinking like a man who's worth $1 million, he said. "Because the truth is, no one's going to hand you success. You have to take it." The man listened, absorbing every word. He had never met anyone like Trump. The people who passed him on the street either ignored him or tossed him a few coins without a second thought. No one had ever challenged him before. No one had ever expected more from him. "You're not as broken as you think you are," Trump said, "but the only way out of this is to stop waiting for people to save you and start figuring out how to save yourself." The homeless man looked at him, realizing that this wasn't just about money. This was about perspective. This was about choosing to see beyond the next meal, beyond the next night, beyond survival. Trump wasn't just speaking to him. He was handing him the key to something bigger. And for the first time in a long time, the man began to wonder if he still had the strength to turn that key. Donald Trump had spent his life making decisions that changed the course of history, from skyscrapers to business deals, from high-stakes negotiations to the world of politics. Every move he made was calculated, deliberate, and driven by a vision for something greater. But in this moment, standing face to face with a homeless man who had once believed he was invisible to the world, Trump was about to make a decision that had nothing to do with wealth or power. It had to do with one man's future. The man had shared his story, a past filled with promise, dreams that had once seemed within reach, only to be swallowed by bad decisions, misfortune, and a system that didn't wait for anyone to catch up. He had lost more than just money or a home. He had lost belief in himself, and that, more than anything, was what Trump saw. Trump had never been a man who believed in handouts. He didn't believe in throwing money at a problem and walking away. Money by itself didn't change people. Mindset did. The difference between those who stayed down and those who got back up was never about the number in their bank account. It was about whether they had the fire to fight for something better. Trump made his decision. Reaching into his pocket, he didn't pull out a single dollar. He pulled out something far greater. Maybe it was a larger sum of money, not as a gift, but as a test, a chance to see if the man would spend it or invest it. Maybe it was a job offer, not an easy one, but something that required effort, commitment, and proof that he was willing to work for a second chance. Maybe it was a challenge, a simple but powerful dare to prove that he wasn't just another lost soul waiting for help, but a man capable of helping himself. Whatever it wasn't charity. It was opportunity. It was a moment that could change everything. If the man had the courage to take it. Trump looked at him one last time. His voice firm, unwavering. "This is in your hands now. What happens next is up to you." For the first time in years, the homeless man realized that someone wasn't just giving him something to survive another day. He was being given a chance to break free, to rewrite his story, to reclaim his life. The question now wasn't whether Trump would help him. The question was whether he was ready to help himself. And in that moment, as he stared at the opportunity in his hands, he knew this was the turning point. His life would never be the same again. The street had been noisy just moments before, filled with the usual hum of city life, the rush of footsteps, the honking of horns, the distant murmur of conversations blending into the chaos. But now, in the wake of what had just unfolded, there was silence. The people who had stopped to watch had done so out of curiosity. They had expected to see the same scene they had witnessed countless times before, a well-dressed man either ignoring the homeless man or tossing him a few coins before moving on, barely acknowledging his existence. But what had happened instead was something none of them could have predicted. Donald Trump had done what no one else had even thought to do. He had stopped, he had listened, and he had challenged. There was no pity in his voice, no empty words meant to ease his own conscience before continuing on with his day. Instead, there had been a direct confrontation of reality, a conversation not about need, but about self-worth, ambition, and the power of choice. And now, as people stood frozen in place, trying to process what they had just seen, respect began to replace disbelief. This wasn't just about money, it was about a mindset shift. A wealthy man had been asked for $1, and instead of simply giving it away, he had given something more valuable, a wake-up call. The homeless man stood there, still holding on to the opportunity Trump had given him, his hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No one had ever looked him in the eye and seen him as more than a man in need. No one had ever given him a chance, an actual tangible moment where his life could go one of two ways. For so long, he had felt forgotten, invisible to the world. But now, standing in front of one of the most powerful men in the world, he felt something he hadn't in years seen. People in the crowd whispered to each other, some nodding, in quiet understanding, others still processing what had unfolded before their eyes. They had thought they were about to witness just another moment of charity. Instead, they had witnessed a lesson in leadership. Trump had not just given, he had empowered. And as he turned to walk away, his presence still lingering in the air like an unshakable force, one thing became clear to everyone who had witnessed it. This was more than just an encounter. This was a statement, and the man who had been given a second chance at life now had a choice to make. The moment could have ended there, just another encounter in a busy city, witnessed by a handful of bystanders who would later recount it to friends and family. But this was Donald Trump, and nothing involving him ever stayed small. Within hours, news of what had happened spread like wildfire. A bystander who had recorded the exchange on their phone uploaded the clip online, and it didn't take long for it to go viral. The video, raw and unfiltered, showed a billionaire being approached by a homeless man, not just giving him money, but giving him a challenge, giving him a chance. The internet exploded. Every great leader leaves a legacy. Be part of the conversation. Smash that like button, share your opinion in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more powerful Trump insights. Some were stunned, others were inspired. Many had never seen anything like it before. A man worth billions refusing to give a simple $1, not out of cruelty, but out of principle. The debate began instantly. Was Trump right to challenge him instead of just giving money? Why didn't he just help the man with no strings attached? Did this moment prove that success is about mindset more than circumstance? But no matter where people stood on the discussion, one thing was undeniable. This moment made people think. It wasn't just about money. It was about self-worth. It was about breaking cycles of dependency. It was about the difference between a handout and an opportunity. People shared the video with captions like, "This is what leadership looks like." A lesson in self-reliance from the most unexpected place. Trump just proved that helping people isn't about giving them money. It's about changing how they see themselves. Entrepreneurs, business leaders, and self-made success stories weighed in, praising the philosophy behind Trump's response. It wasn't just about a homeless man. It was about everyone who had ever felt stuck, who had ever felt powerless, who had ever waited for someone else to come along and save them. The impact was massive. People started talking, not just about Trump, but about themselves, about how they had been thinking, about whether they had been playing small, waiting for luck instead of taking action. And somewhere in the middle of it all was the homeless man himself. His story was no longer just his own. Now he was a symbol of potential, a symbol of a choice, a symbol of what could happen when someone was given a reason to believe in themselves again. And as the world watched, one question remained. Would he take the opportunity that had been placed in front of him? Because whether people loved Trump or hated him, they all agreed on one thing. What happened that day was not just a moment, it was a movement. Donald Trump had always believed that true success was not about how much money you had, but about how you used what you had to create something greater. He had built his name, his empire, and his legacy on that principle. Wealth was not just about dollars. It was about decisions, vision, and the ability to seize opportunity when it appeared. And as he walked away from that encounter, he knew that what had just happened was far more valuable than a simple act of charity. This had not been about giving a man $1. That would have been easy. That would have been forgettable. That would have changed nothing. Instead, Trump had given him something far more powerful, an opportunity, a challenge, a reason to think beyond survival and see what was possible. The homeless man, once just another nameless figure on the streets, now had a choice. He could take the money, the job offer, or the challenge Trump had placed before him and turn it into something greater. Or he could continue living the way he had, waiting for life to happen to him instead of taking control of his own future. But one thing was certain. He could no longer say that no one had ever given him a chance. And for the thousands, maybe even millions, who had watched this story unfold, the lesson was just as clear. Helping people isn't always about giving them money. It's about giving them belief. It's about challenging them to see beyond their circumstances. It's about pushing them to step up, to take control, to fight for something better. Because Trump knew that you can give a man $1 and he'll need another one tomorrow. But give a man a reason to believe in himself and he'll never need another handout again. And that was what real leadership looked like. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a lesson in mindset, a lesson in opportunity, a lesson in the true power of standing up for yourself. Share this story so more people can see what real leadership looks like. Strength, strategy, and vision. If these qualities inspire you, you're in the right place. Show your support by liking this video, commenting your thoughts, and subscribing for more.